Ladies and gentlemen, now that we have completed all of the animations which we wanted to do for this video, animation number one being one with a light background and After Effects and Premiere Pro animation, another one being with the cool 3D parallax effect that we created, and the third one being the cool UI which we created, we can finally move on to sound design. So we finished stage one, which is raw footage, stage two, which is text, and stage three now, which was animation, and now it's on to stage four, which is the sound design. Now, as you guys remember, there are three steps in our sound design workflow. There's number one, the whooshes, number two, the textures, and number three, the risers. So in the case that we will need any extra sound effects, we will most likely just get them from Epidemic Sound as usual. But for now, we should be able to use that same sound effects library which we made earlier on in the course. Now, if you haven't yet developed your sound effects library, what are you waiting for? You're going to need this so much as an editor. So make sure you spend some time developing it, at least a few hours. Spend an hour or 2 hours just looking up good sound effects and adding them into your sound effects library. And then feel free to go ahead and use them. Don't add too many, but feel free to go ahead and use them inside of your edits. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do the sound design together. So you guys have already had amazing practice on sound design, and I'm sure this is going to be easy for all of you guys. So let's go ahead and get to work on this. I'm going to quickly add in my sound design library that I made in the course, which is right here, sound effects library. Awesome. And we're going to go ahead and get started on our whooshes. So if you guys remember, we have a few kinds of whooshes. You guys can check them out right here. Here we go. There's the second one. Here's the third one. We got, that's not whoosh. We got these tougher whooshes. Then we've got these smaller ones. Right? And then we've got this kind of complex dynamic whoosh. So the first step we got to do is go ahead and watch through this video and look for any movement. So let's go ahead and watch through the first clip and analyze if there's any movement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you master video editing in 2025. First, as you guys clearly saw in the first clip, we have a quick zoom in over here in the beginning. So that is going to be the first movement which we add a whoosh to. Let's check out the second clip. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Now over here, there are two different kinds of movements. There is the pop-ups. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to, now here there's no real zoom, stylize your content with. And finally, you're going to need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase your work. And all this can be done in just 90 days inside of Ultimate Edit. Awesome. So we have like just a few total zoom-ins. So I'm going to start with this first one. For this first one, I remember using this heavy one because it's a pretty heavy zoom in over here. You guys can probably notice like it's very, very rough. So for that reason, I'm going to use a very strong whoosh right here. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this in. But I'm also going to make sure that I align the peak of it with the start of the motion. So the start of the motion is right here. This is the fastest point. So I'm going to make sure I get the peak of that whoosh and get it in here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how... Awesome. Now let's go ahead and tone this down by like maybe -10. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you... -10 is too much. Let's do -5 if possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this... Awesome. Looks is how you master video editing in 2025. First, you must learn, and this is our second section. So let's go ahead and get straight into this. Here we've got first, you must learn both Premiere Pro. The nature of the whooshes, it's actually like the whooshes aren't long. They're pretty regular. So I think I'll use one of these. I think I'll just use one of them for two, because instead of using two small whooshes back to back, we could just use one. And I think it's going to be good. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and yeah, something like this. Now, this one's pretty... It's pretty washed out, so I think I would use one like this, which would probably sound a lot better. Here we go. Go put it here. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro, and then we're just going to go ahead and select it and just go with like -15. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Okay, so I have the pop-up. First, you must learn both Premiere... I wish we had a smaller whoosh. One that we could use for both of these, but it is what it is. What do we got to do? Maybe, you know what, let's go ahead and get a quick small whoosh. So let's go ahead and open up Epidemic Sound if I've got it open. Let's get this bad boy booted up. Here we go. Here's Epidemic. Whoops. Here is Epidemic Sound. All right, let's go ahead and get into sound effects and let's look up some whooshes. So let's go quick whoosh. And I want to see if we can find some fast ones. Oh, never mind. That's just a bug. Anyways, okay. Too long. Too long. Yeah, I think these are really good. So I'm going to go ahead and try and use these. And we'll just see how these end up, okay? Here we go. Let's just give this a try. Alrighty. go ahead and see. Maybe this would sound better. Because if we can have two small whooshes, then it's a lot nicer. So maybe just one here, on the peak here. And then just duplicate it and have another one just slightly more delayed. Like that. First, you must learn both Premiere. Yeah, there we go. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and then for the zoom in, we're just gonna have this one. Since we might as well. Right. Premiere Pro and After Effects. And as you, obviously there's a lot of whooshes here, and you guys remember my rule of rarity in sound design, we don't want to use that many whooshes, so we're gonna have to make them really quiet. So let's give them a -5. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. We definitely need to make them more quiet because we barely need them to be noticeable. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Much better. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to stylize your content with. And finally, you're gonna need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase your work. And one thing I just remembered that I forgot to do is to actually get all the text up to the top of these. So I'm just going to quickly do this. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly select all the text, hold down shift and just select all of them like this. Whoops. Okay, I could just basically select all these and then just, you know, deselect these ones. I don't know. How do you do that? Never mind. Let's move this. Yeah, and I just want to get all of these guys up here on top of our layers just to make sure that, yeah. I just want to do this just so that they pop up on top of our animations. You must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to stylize your content with. And finally, you're going to need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase your work. And all this can be done in... And last but not least, we've got that final whoosh at the end, which we're going to use one of these for. Yeah, we could use one of these just so we can blend it in with the transition. The reason I'm going to use one of these because they're longer is just so that we could blend it in with this transition like so. Your work, and all this can be done in just 90 days inside of Ultimate Edit. Okay, just to make it look nicer. All right, with this being said, let's move on to our textured sound effects. So let's check this out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you master video editing in 2025. So over here, we've got nothing that we could texture. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Now for this section, I'm honestly thinking of removing these two whooshes and instead of them using a UI sound effect to make it look like a click. I think that's just going to be a lot better. So if we just go over to our texture sounds and we have a... What do we have over here? We've got a, where is it? UI click over here. Maybe one of these. Yeah, one of these would just be a lot better just because it's so much simpler. Premiere Pro and After, like that. And then just use this one for the second one. Right, so and then this one here. And After Effects, but I would just tone them down by -10. Premiere Pro and After Effects. Yeah, that will just be so much better. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to... For this section here, since we have a subtle zoom in, one thing I've noticed that works really nicely with subtle zoom ins is because this kind of feels like a computer screen, like it's just robotic. We could use a data sound effect like this. And we could just put this in the background like this and just make it so subtle and it will just work really nicely here. Check that out. It will just fill in the ambience if we put it at -15. To stylize your content, yeah, something like this, and then just blend it in on both edges like that. Perfect. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to stylize your content with. And finally, like and then finally we've got the UI. And for the UI over here, you're going to need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase. There's nothing we can add. One thing you could do is you can blend in the cut because it's so rough. You can blend it in with either a click or some kind of thing here. I'll show you guys how to do this. It's really simple. All you got to do is just get a click, like a really loud one. Yeah, something like this. And then just, this is a UI sound, so it's not a click, but we could still put it like on top of this cut. So like the sound effect is between the cuts. And finally, you're going to need to like create a high quality, right? And we can actually, if we duplicated this to the first cut as well, what we could do is we can make it seem so that this sound effect is selecting between these different scenes. Check that out here. After Effects. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to stylize your content with. And finally, you're going to need to create a high quality, but I don't think we need to do this, but we'll just use it for this one over here. It's good. And finally, you're going to need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase your work. And all this can be done in just 90 days inside of Ultimate. And there we go. Now let's go and see where we can add, like unfortunately, there's not many places we can add the texture sound effects in this one because most of it was stagnant and still animations. However, we're going to start adding in just one riser over here. I know exactly where we got to add it. As I told you guys, one of the most common places you can add it's right after the intro. So you can build up your viewer into it. And I think that is a great idea, which we could do over here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to add in a riser for the intro here. So let's go over to our, Let's see that we have it right here inside of our risers. And I'm just going to add this riser over here into the intro, like so. And I'm just going to place it on a different audio track. And I'm going to have it build up. As you guys can see, it's build up to the point where the cut happens, just like right here. In 2025. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro. I think that's a great idea. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you master video editing in 2025. First, you must learn both Premiere Pro and After Effects. Then you must learn a high quality editing style to stylize your content with. And finally, you're going to need to create a high quality personal brand to showcase your work. And all this can be done in just 90 days inside of Ultimate Editing. Awesome. There we go. And this whole thing just kind of completes it for the textured sound effects. And that is literally it for the risers as well. So as you guys noticed, simple whooshes, simple textured sound effects, and simple risers. That is genuinely all that you need. So with this being said, guys, we are basically almost done. We just have one final step, which is the music. And the music is probably going to be very, very simple. Since we've already downloaded music tracks, if you guys haven't built out your music library, make sure you check out those courses. But all we have to do is just drag in this music soundtrack and we're going to be good to go. So let's go ahead and check this out. All right. All that we're going to do is we're going to go over to our music library, which we have created, which is inside of here somewhere. There it is. And I'm just going to drag. Let's see how would this video be like? This video probably wouldn't be happy. It would probably be modern, motivational, or mysterious, and definitely wouldn't be sad. But guess what? I'm going to go ahead and give them all a try just to make sure that we can find the best kind of soundtrack. And I'm going to go ahead and do that in the next course. So if you guys follow along with me into the next course, we're going to be trying out the music and figuring out which one is the best, finalizing and exporting. It's the first time I'm going to be teaching you guys how to export a video. And then we're going to go ahead and dive into the next steps for you guys as video editors. So without further ado, let's get right into it.